Today on the Relationship Renovation podcast, we have a special guest, Alex Romo, LMSW, and we talk about ADHD.
People that live with ADHD perceive time in two ways, either now or not now. If our partner isn't delicate and focused or intentional about how they bring up their own feelings of disconnectedness in the relationship.
Its impact on both individuals and their relationship.
First and foremost, don't be ashamed of it. It's one of the most common mental health diagnoses out in the world, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It can be an element of unity for the relationship.
Hello, all, and welcome to the Relationship Renovation podcast. I'm Tarah Kerwin.
And my name is EJ Kerwin. And as you can see, we have a guest in studio, which is always super fun. And this is Alex Romo. He's actually a new therapist on our staff, which is always really cool for us to have.
Love it.
Just to give you a little background first on Alex, and then I'll let you kind of chime in as well, is Alex is an LMSW. He's a licensed master social worker. He spent years in the school system. He worked in TUSD, which is Tucson Unified School District, working with helping young men have healthy expressions of masculinity, with conflict resolution in healthy ways, and also led, boys and girls groups that just help them navigate their teen years. And in being in the school system for those years, you also worked a lot with kids who had ADHD, and that's kind of what we're going to take on a little bit today. So welcome, Alex.
Thank you, EJ. And thank you for having me on the podcast.
So we always love having the opportunity to have some of our therapists on our podcast because we all have our own unique gifts and knowledge. And so I'm always asking, what topic would you like to talk about? And I'm just wondering why you chose the topic that we're going to talk about today.
That's a good question. And I sort of relating a little bit to my background. I had the wonderful opportunity to work with all of these youths that were sort of demonstrating a lot of really unique attributes and traits. And I got the opportunity to reflect on my own experiences as well. And I wasn't diagnosed with ADHD until I was an adult. However, I navigated all that space through my formative years without that knowledge. So when I was in my 20s and I got my diagnosis, I hit that aha moment. Mm-hmm. And it clarified so many elements of me and myself. And when I was working with youth, I got the opportunity to maybe do some careful asking and questioning and seeing if some of these same things sort of lit a fire for them as well and inspired that curiosity. And I think that when I reflect on that journey and as I transition here to relationship renovation, I was looking for my niche, looking for my speciality. And I mean, it's kind of the journey of looking inwardly. It's like, well, what inspired me to even do therapy to begin with? When I was empowered by my ADHD diagnosis to really uncover all of those stones of myself, that I realized, well, I have a keen interest and a lived experience with this that I kind of wanted to form the basis of my practice.
So I know that there's a lot of different routes we could go around with ADHD, and you've worked with youth and you've got diagnosed as an adult. What's important for you today in our podcast?
Yeah, that's a great question, Tara. And for me, for this podcast, I want to discuss about how ADHD presents itself in couples and in relationships.
Yeah.
We understand that there are very unique challenges that present themselves when one partner is neurotypical and another person is neurodivergent, and sort of that interplay that happens that's honestly very unique to individual couples and the challenges that can rise from that.
So first of all, I love this topic. We've never had a topic like this, and we have over 200 episodes.
Wow.
But what it's like to be in a coupleship where one or even both have a diagnosis or even undiagnosed ADHD. And so for you to bring your knowledge and experience today is such a gift.
Yeah. So, I mean, let's start with because you're saying through your own personal lens at first, you're like, that's what brought you to this. What were the things that you were noticing as a young person, as a young adult, where you were like, just like this is like doesn't seem optimal or,
I think that first and foremost, I was awkward. I was awkward as a teen. And I felt like it went beyond just the typical sort of clumsiness of adolescence. It definitely felt like it was something else. And it formed a lot of my negative core beliefs when I was younger. A lot of those instances of low self-esteem, low self-confidence, trying to preserve what I felt was grace. Yeah. And I believed that when I was transitioning into my adulthood, I carried a lot of that with me until I learned more about what ADHD was, built some psychoeducation around that for myself through my therapist, through my own therapeutic journey and my own additional education that really unlocked that sort of, maybe it wasn't me, right?
Yeah, like there was something that kind of put the puzzle together. So you're thinking, gosh, there's something wrong with me, and you're developing these negative core beliefs. Then you're in your 20s, you start going to therapy, you get this diagnosis of ADHD, and like help us understand that. I don't want to say relief, but like how like the shift that it made for you.
Gosh, that's a good question. It was a shift of, I think for myself, it was a shift of allowing myself grace, right? That peace. And I'll reflect to an experience I always had. I remember I had a couple at the time. I was a partner at the time that was very frustrated with me constantly forgetting little bits and ends, like things like my keys, things like my wallet, or simple dates. There would be, without fail, every instance I stepped out of the house, I would have to rush back in because I forgot one, two, or both.
Yeah.
And
a frustrated partner. We know a lot about that. Okay, continue.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in that, it was that feeling of guilt and shame and not being like, well, why can't I just get it
There's
together?
Something wrong with you.
Mm-hmm. And when I did receive the diagnosis, when I was offered that clarity, it unlocked all of that, all those elements of myself that was like, yeah, no, it's how I'm experiencing the world, not necessarily a deficiency with me or my character.
Like a character fault. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, what was that? I mean, because not a lot of people who listen to our show, they might have a loose sort of understanding of mental health, but they're not professionals, right? Help us understand ADHD. Like, this is what I've learned about it. This is what it looks like.
What I've learned about ADHD is there's this misconception that it's a personality trait, right? That it's a person being clumsy or forgetful or not present or hyperactive.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people sort of misunderstand is that it's a neurological condition. It's an experience. It's a way that persons perceive the world. And establishing that shift, that education first with couples in therapy and for the people around you in our lives, it's really about understanding that it's not a deficiency. It's how our brain works, right? Where I like to sort of put it, if I can put it in the terms of an analogy, it's you ever heard of heat-seeking missiles, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Well, people that live with ADHD are dopamine-seeking missiles. We're always seeking that high, that experience, that thrill of new, that next thing that gives us that dopamine rush. And so that leads us in relationship and in life to sort of be a little bit squirrely, right?
I was going to say, this could be such a good lead-in into ADHD and intimate relationships, because if you have one person who's constantly seeking new dopamine rushes and relationships, like, right, hopefully they're long and they can lose their shine. And then also if there's not that understanding from the other person, because, right, you've got neurodivergent versus neurotypical, like what shows up, and then how do you support them and like having compassion for like their very unique differences that are also causing heartaches and frustrations and annoyances?
That's a really good question. And it's also a very challenging one to answer because there's two separate needs happening, right? From the perspective of a perhaps neurotypical partner, they initially probably experience this sort of elation of, oh, this partner's paying attention to me and they're always present and they're always there and so attentive and careful. And from a person with ADHD's perspective, it is that newness, that fire, that intensity of the relationship that's just arousing all of these different sort of exciting thoughts and chemical processes. And over time, naturally, a person with ADHD's focus will shift a little bit. And a neurotypical person might say, well, they used to be so attentive. They used to be so present with me. And that can cause hurt, right? That can cause a little bit of insecurity and maybe feeling unfulfilled in the relationship. And really from that perspective, I sort of see how there needs to be a reach out to each other, right? And understanding that it isn't necessarily that they're losing connection or losing that fire, but it's more from understanding that ADHD sort of manifests itself in very unique ways, and passions are spontaneous like that.
Right.
So what I'm hearing is that like actually individual who has ADHD in a relationship at first might be almost like hyper-focused, might be like really, really into it, giving tons of attention, being super attentive because it feeds that dopamine need. But then when eventually, like anything, if we become habituated, it might be a more stark difference than normal where your attention then is like very different after a while.
Absolutely. In a lot of experience, that's a pretty typical experience for a couple that has this dynamic of ADHD within the relationship. But it doesn't necessarily have to be just specifically that, right? A lot of the way that ADHD presents itself can be that forgetfulness, right? That perhaps lack of focus or lack of intention. And a person can be meaning well. A person can absolutely be meaning well. And I think of many instances where I'll say I'm going to do a chore or something around the house, and I'll do it for months. I'll say I'll be doing it for months, and it doesn't get done.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the way that it's not just intentional forgetfulness. I like to always say that people that live with ADHD perceive time in two ways.
Yeah.
Either now or not now.
Yeah. Wow. Is it okay if I share like a personal experience prior to dating you?
Sure.
To marrying you, to everything. But I feel like it relates so much because I was in this relationship, which I didn't know that this person, I would say it's like undiagnosed ADHD. And like, right, I have wicked abandonment issues, like just saying. So in the beginning, we were together for years. In the beginning, it was like this amazing, beautiful, like you said, new thing, paying so much attention. And then over time, like literally he would show up like 2 hours late for a date. And I was in so much pain, like emotional pain, like, oh my God, like he just doesn't love me. Like my whole abandonment stuff was triggered by his like lack of like, he just would forget things. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I was doing my work and I got so intrigued because he was a visual designer and always had new jobs. So he would like, didn't even know the time. And here I am like, I'm awful. I'm nothing. I'm unlovable. And I was taking it very personally until I had to see him do something outside of our relationship. Like he had to finish this project. And I saw how hard it was for him. Like he literally could not finish it. And he'd been working on it for 8 years.
Wow.
And that's when I knew like it has nothing to do with me. Like he's got ADHD, like undiagnosed. He didn't want to help himself and that was fine. But I was like, someone with abandonment issues, like even though I'm working on them, like that's just not my jam. But I just remember having that stark, like that shift of like, it's not about me. Like he's in this just very different neurological place. And like, I just remember like, yeah, it was huge.
Wow.
For me. And then I ended that relationship because it had to end.
Right.
But yeah, I was in it. I lived it. And like, how do you know? It's like if you're someone who What if you're like in this relationship right now and you don't know your partner might have ADHD? You're feeling really like alone, insignificant, like you're not a priority. And maybe you don't get to have the experience of seeing your partner do something outside of your relationship where it's like, oh my gosh, it's not me. Like there is something else happening here. Like how do you help couples with that? Or I guess what's even the starting point of like, hey, what if it could be something else? What if it's not that you're being neglected in this relationship?
That's a really great question. And honestly, thank you so much for sharing that, because it's a great way to sort of present where I like to start when it comes to couples that have ADHD that's present in their relationship.
Nice.
Is I like shifting the perspective of a person that's like neurotypical. I like to shift that perspective from a judgmental perspective into a accepting and learning perspective. And that usually starts with some careful questioning. It's like, okay, tell me a little bit about your life. Do you have difficulties keeping time? Do you have time blindness? Is it this issue where you overload tasks and you don't really conceptualize how much time they're going to take, and before you know it, you're 45 minutes, 2 hours late to a date? It really does look like building that understanding that your partner is experiencing the world differently, and building that focus is difficult to create. And it's also difficult to maintain. Yeah.
I think it's also like it would be a little bit of an eye-opening for both people oftentimes, because there are, like yourself, so many people who maybe have ADHD or ADHD, traits or whatever that have just been mislabeled as laziness, as
Unfocused.
like you're just unfocused, you're just like a spaz, whatever. So they just have taken it on that they have character faults, and then the partner also, in some ways, because this person hasn't walked in and said like, look, I struggle with ADHD. I'm trying to figure out how to sort of manage my life with it. The partner doesn't understand it. So it's a little bit about both people coming to an understanding of like, hey, this is sort of how this person is wired. This is how I'm wired. And what are we going to do about it?
It's a sense of compassion now instead of judgment and irritation.
Yeah, absolutely.
If they're willing to do it, right?
And that's a challenge in and of itself, because like how EJ, you mentioned, we're tackling with negative core beliefs from both partners, right? We're tackling with abandonment issues. We're talking about insecurities or feeling like the partner's not present with us. And just exactly how you mentioned, EJ, a person that lives with ADHD has really formed these negative core beliefs over time. From the age 7 through 21, a person with undiagnosed ADHD could have heard up to 20,000 more negative feedbacks from their experiences, like things like you're lazy, you're uncoordinated, you're clumsy, you're forgetful.
Why can't you just get your shit together?
Why can't you just get it together? Exactly. And obviously that burrows itself down here.
Sure.
And so the second that our partner turns to us and says, hey, you're not with me. And they're immediately spiraling down.
There's the reinforcement. Bam.
And there is a correlation directly to persons that have low self-esteem or low perceptions of low self-worth and this ADHD. So if our partner isn't delicate and focused or intentional about how they bring up their own feelings of disconnectedness in the relationship, it can instantly trigger that element of low self-esteem. Like, oh, I'm not good enough for you. And now we're just not connecting at all.
So can I ask a personal question? And you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
Please do.
So in your past relationship versus current relationship, with prior ADHD diagnosis to post ADHD diagnosis, how has that changed? Like, are there people where you've told like, hey, gotta let you know, like I told EJ on our first date, I'm high maintenance emotionally, just letting you know, buddy. And he's like, cool, I got you. Like, what's the difference that you've noticed in your intimate relationships from pre to post diagnosis?
Wow.
I know that's a big question.
That is a big question.
And you don't have to answer if you don't want to.
I think I can answer if I have a moment.
You have all the time in the world.
So the way I sort of conceptualize my experience with relationships prior to my ADHD diagnosis and post is my intention to communicate that I have this, that I live with it, and this is X, Y, Z way that it manifests, right? And I do ask for grace. Like, I'm not going to be perfect. I will be in occasion 15 minutes late. I will hyperfixate. I constantly share with my current partner that I have this whole boot phase that I'm just been really enjoying, learning everything about leather crafting and different types of, I overshare. And I ask for that. And sometimes I'll bury my partner in my own learning and my own facts. And but what I ask for is grace. I ask for that patience and understanding that this is how it presents itself. And I also do a lot of very mindful check-ins with myself.
That's huge.
I know that in relationship renovation, we do a lot of RAIN techniques. Yeah. And for myself, it's definitely taking a moment to pause. And as a matter of fact, on talking about oversharing hobbies, I was feeling a little bit just last night about like, perhaps I'm oversharing. Perhaps I'm occupying too much space. Yeah. And sort of fighting with that instinctual belief of trying to make myself smaller because of that low self-esteem. But I took some time. My feelings are, I'm feeling insecure. I'm feeling perhaps a little scared that, and then I reached out to my partner and said, hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Yeah. And I'm asking for a validation.
So here's what's important, because I really want our listeners to hear this. It's not like, I have ADHD and this is an excuse of why I can't show up in the relationship. It's I struggle, right, with ADHD and here's how it shows up. But I am always doing intentional individual work to see how it's presenting itself and then to communicate that with my partner.
What's like the balance for you between the acceptance of like, this is just sort of an aspect of who I am, and this is what I want to change about myself, right? Because that's the hard thing about the whole negative core belief part is like, we can't just like blanket accept parts of ourselves that are, that it's obviously good for us to make some change, right? But we also have to accept like, hey, I'm wired this way, right? Like, how do you balance those two?
To answer your question, I feel like that the person that has their ADHD is a very unique experience, right? It's different for everyone. And so it is a little bit on the responsibility of the person that lives with it to understand that element about themselves, right? There is parts where we can fix or not fix. I don't like using that word, but improve, right? And it can be a very thoughtful exercise to bring our partner into that and be like, hey, so I have issues with keeping time. Can we possibly talk a little bit about what I can do and what may work for me? I know that for myself, keeping on time, I intentionally have all of my clocks set at 15 minutes ahead. So that way I'm conceptually in my mind late, but really I'm on time. And it is our personal responsibility in that sense, in my opinion, to really understand the elements that we want to improve, that we want to focus on, and understanding that it's not a solo journey entirely. There's a network around us. There's partners, there's family members. And, something as simple as just empowering ourselves with education is a great way. And some people are voracious note takers and they'll put sticky notes all over their monitor, and that works, right?
Well, and I love how you said it's about like recognizing individually, like creating systems, but then working with your partner in doing it together. Not like, hey, that's your thing. Like, go manage that yourself. Like, you're bringing your partner into it. Like, how can we, set up systems so that we can make this work together, so that we're on the same page and we feel connected in it. And so then pre-ADHD diagnosis, before things made sense, what would happen in your like intimate relationships? Would you just work harder? Would they break up with you? How did it?
A little bit of both.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are, much similar to your experience, Tara, there are some persons that are just not in their own emotional journey, ready to accept and prepared really to accept the traits and uniqueness of others, and we allow space for that, of course.
Yeah.
Relationships are a journey, and sometimes they're messy.
Sometimes.
Right.
Okay, continue.
No, that's good.
That's like a whole other podcast.
That's a whole other podcast. And pre-diagnosis, I was often hovering around these negative spaces of my own core beliefs of that I am not good enough, that I don't belong here, that I have a little bit of that imposter syndrome, that I am clumsy and awkward. And it would, first and foremost, results in arguments, right?
Yeah.
Why can't you do this?
Yes.
Why can't you get this part right?
Yes.
And I don't understand why I can't, but I feel really small for you pointing it out all the time.
Yeah. Like you felt very criticized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So you have opportunity here to say, hey, person in a relationship with ADHD, this is what I think it would be important for you to hear. Hey, person who's dating somebody or partnered with somebody, married to somebody who has ADHD, this is what can we take that like one at a time? Like start with the person that is identifying with you that says, yeah, like either I have the diagnosis or I think I might. What do you want to say to that person?
I'd say, own it. Yeah, it's a process of just accepting that element of you and reframing it for yourself as a way that you experience the world and not a deficiency on your character or your person. Be curious about how it presents. We constantly talk about how ADHD manifests itself in very unique ways. It's different to an individual, and it'll be unique to you as well. That's what I would say. And be curious, be excited about discovering what sets you off, what holds you back, where you feel you can bring in your partner to help you support and address this need that you have. And first and foremost, like, don't be ashamed of it. It's one of the most common mental health diagnoses out in the world, and it's nothing to be ashamed of.
Be empowered by it.
Be empowered by it.
Yeah. Love
All right.
that.
How about for the person who's in a relationship with someone with ADHD? What do you want to tell them?
Ironically enough, it's also be curious.
Curious.
Yeah, because it can be an element of unity for the relationship. It can be a source of grounding for those negative core beliefs of feeling like we're not valued or we're not important or that our neurodivergent partners are present with us. It's an opportunity to get to know intimately the way that your partner's brain works. And there's something empowering in just being able to say, oh yeah, no, EJ is going to hyperfixate on the audio equipment for an hour. And I have to be okay with that. But I know that he still loves me, or, so on and so forth.
I love that. Yes, always like having that compassion, but not personalizing your partner's neurodivergence, that it's about you. So that way you can be in it together. And had I known, right, I wouldn't be here with EJ because who knows what would have happened. I'd probably still be in a different state. But so I'm glad like that this worked out in this way. But I also know that having that understanding and compassion and curiosity is so much better than feeling alone and judged and criticized and like you're not enough. And I think both people, like if they don't have that awareness, both people in a relationship where you're with someone with ADHD or abandonment issues, they both feel alone in it. They both feel like they're doing something wrong, but they're not communicating about it because they're always on the defense cycle. So I love how you talked about like at an individual level, being curious, owning it on both parts, and then trying to create systems that actually work, but giving grace when those systems sometimes don't work all the time.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, I really like today's way in which we approach this topic, like ADHD, how it affects the individual, how it affects couples, because we really looked at it in a really like humanistic way.
Yes,
like
I loved
we
it
got
too.
sort of, we touched a little bit about dopamine and a little bit about traits, but really it was about like, what's it like to have this thing that makes your brain just work a little bit differently. It makes you function in life a little bit differently. how does it affect you at a core level around how you feel about yourself? And then how does it sort of like, reverberate in a relationship, create frustration, but also offer opportunity for empathy, for compassion, for deeper connection?
And can I share one thing? Because I'm like reflecting on this entire conversation, which it's been so lovely to have you here, Alex.
Thank you.
Not once did we talk about medication. And how often do you hear they have ADHD, medicate? I love that we didn't talk about it. I don't even have this like need to know if you take it or don't take it. It was the emotional component and connection and negative core beliefs empowered by positive core beliefs that you are enough no matter what. That like, I just recognize that because most people who talk about ADD or ADHD or kids, like you need to get on meds. Need to get on meds.
You need to pacify this element of yourself.
Yeah.
When I heard a lot of like adapting through accepting aspects of myself while also addressing ways in which I can become more mindful of and more intentional in my actions, and how the partner can do the same thing.
Yes. And by no means am I saying that medication is not good. I'm just saying I found it interesting that it was all kind of focused on the emotional regulation piece of it in relationships. So I love that.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you all for listening so much. Thank you, Alex, for being a part of the show and now being a part of our staff.
Yay.
At Relationship Renovation.
For anybody in Tucson, if you're struggling with ADHD, as an adult or a child, we've got Alex now. All is good.
Absolutely.
I'm the guy.
And thank you all for listening. We appreciate you being a part of our community. It really helps us out a lot if you just, rate our show, give us a review, send us an email if this is a topic or any other topic we have is something that really interests you and you want us to go deeper or have a particular question. Please hit us up at info@relationshiprenovation.com.
And always, if you're listening to any of our podcasts, today's podcast with Alex, if you're like, gosh, I know somebody who would really benefit from this episode, share. We love shares. It's awesome. And again, thank you, Alex, for being here, for being a part of our team and your awesome human self. And as always, take care of yourself, take care of each other. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you.